I'm still convinced this car is angry with me for fixing it. My last two Hyundai videos were about bug squashing in the figurative sense, and trying to get a good drag pass out of this thing. Lots of bugs have been squashed, and I did finally manage to get a good run at wastegate pressure after several attempts to get out to the track. But here we are continuing this rolling experiment. I learned quite a bit about the Hyundai's new build with that losing run, and every boost junkie knows that wastegate pressure is never enough. We always want more, so I decided to turn the boost up. I gave the manual boost controller a half a turn. No clue where it landed, but let's see what she does with it.
Blew a pipe off. That was an intercooler pipe. I don't learn nothing from that run.
You know what? I was watching the tree in the road, so I didn't even see how much boost I was running. I also don't think I'm ever going to break the street habit of signaling right at the end of the runoff lanes to turn around. Keeping myself multitasking helped me fail to notice the Java exception that occurred immediately after I clicked the capture button. So I suppose my boost levels will still remain a mystery. I'm just documenting all this stuff the way it happened, people. I used to stack the white slips high to the sky with my GSX, but in 2015, the only white slips I get are the ones where I was running unopposed, by myself. Let's be realistic. This is a four-door first-generation Elantra. This is not anyone's first choice of a race car. I'm going to pull this thing into the pits, check out my time slip for any improvement of anything at all, find a place to park, and then assess the damage.
Really? Is that how it is?
Roped off. Some people think they own the racetrack. Of course, I say that arrogantly because the fact of the matter is they bought the rights to those spaces, so they actually do. This looks like a great place to break down. Perfect.
My bet is it's an upper intercooler pipe. Upper intercooler pipe. Yep. Ow. I gotta figure something out for that. Oh, no log. Really? I did that. Son of a...
Since I'm not satisfied with the wastegate pressure and doing it again would just cause the same problem all over again, I decided to take it home and start ripping parts off of it. After all, I predicted this would happen months ago. Given the fact that this car is a hodgepodge of factory parts and custom fabricated stuff, wherever those two kinds of parts meet are where I'm most likely to find all my problems. And when you just look at that, I was holding the exact same part. It seems I'll never get it figured out, but I haven't given up on it yet. Though I don't have a bead roller, I'm lucky enough to have a MIG welder, and my solution to this problem involves adding metal around the lip of this pipe to make it bigger. But making it bigger isn't the only thing that I have to do. Air likes to find the tiniest possible nooks and crannies to leak out of. So it's important at these pressure levels to make the surface as uniform as it can get. Since I don't have superpower welding skills, the bench grinder once again saves the day. I used a die grinder and sanding disc to smooth everything down and define the line where the clamp will bite. There. That looks like it's going to do the trick. You've seen me do the rest of this way too many times already. Hopefully this will be the last one for a while. I just have to clean up both flanges, cut out a new gasket, and then seal it all back up again. Let's get this thing back on the track. It was 93 degrees at night with 100% humidity. Miserable conditions. It was this run where I learned that I was running 20 psi. And it was this run when I started reading just a tiny bit of knob. And it was after this run, after I got my time slip and parked, when my rear passenger window fell down into the door. I joked before about this totaling the car if it ever happened on the driver's side, but I'm too creative to let that ever be the end of it all. It will, however, send you home from the racetrack, because you can't race if you can't roll your windows up. This is really the second time I've had this happen to me with this car, and previously I went with an unorthodox fix. The first matter of business is taking the door cards off so we can get to the regulator assembly, but the plastic trim, ashtray, electrical switches, those have to be removed first. You peel this plastic goop-covered moisture barrier thing out of the way to get to all the regulator motor and the track bolts. I just like to stick it to itself away from where I'm working. You always get that black sticky stuff all over you. Don't even bother with the rubber gloves. They just stick to it and tear it, and then you get black sticky stuff all over you. But anyway, it washes off with soap and water. There are access holes so that you can unbolt the glass from the regulator assembly, but in order to use those bolt holes, you have to be able to get those stationary holes to line up with it first. Just remove those and set the glass aside once you do. Unbolt the track and the motor, disconnect the electrical harness, and wiggle it through the biggest hole you can find. On the car, that is. These things break because all the cable guides and pulleys are plastic. The thing that holds the glass to the cable is a metal collar surrounded by plastic. Plastic, dry rotted plastic. It gets old, dry rots, snap, done. Lightweight, sure, but definitely cheaply and inexpensively made. Depending on how you receive your replacement regulator assembly, it may or it may not include the electric motor. This one's held on by 3 Phillips head machine screws with lock washers, and it's better to have the right tool for the job. You'll probably strip the heads, honking on them with a regular screwdriver, so for best results use an impact driver. Always check the motor for slop or broken drive parts before putting it all back together. The window regulators showed up after a couple of weeks, and I got a really good deal on both of them. Nope, that's the front one. I got the new front one with the electric motor for only $50 shipped, brand new. I got a rear window regulator assembly without the electric motor for $19.99 plus shipping, and it was also brand new. Alright gang, I've invested $70 more in this thing now. It's a commitment. Installation is the opposite of disassembly. After you get the track and the motor bolted in, you put the regulator in place to accept the glass, you bolt the glass back in, you stick the moisture barrier back down, install all the necessary hardware, the door card, the ashtray, the trim, and you're ready to go. I've done regulator replacements that were much worse than this job, but I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore. You should see the ridiculous fix I did on the front regulator right before the rod knock started that led to the last 23 videos. You'll understand that getting kicked out of the track could easily happen to me all over again. This is the reason why I'm replacing the front regulator as well. It's a disaster looking for a place to happen. It worked, but really, it can just as easily fail. After the plastic anchor broke that held the glass in the track, I used my MIG welder to weld the silicone grease saturated steel regulator cable to the galvanized steel regulator slider assembly. It's held to the track with dry rotted plastic guides. There's so many reasons why this shouldn't have worked, but miraculously it did, and it's been a year and a half since I did it, so honestly there hasn't been one single time when I've rolled it down and I didn't cringe. I know that when it lets go, it will be at the worst possible time, and that window really gets used a lot, so I'm going to use this opportunity to do it right. The wires on the new motor were 3 inches too short to reach the connector on the door harness, no matter how I bent and rearranged them. So I decided to cut the plug off of the old window motor, then solder and insulate them onto the harness for the new one. There, problem solved. Then I found this. The insulation on the wires for the window switch on this Hyundai harness had deteriorated into this crumbly, dried Play-Doh-like substance. I don't know if it was from an electrical short, corrosion, biodegrading, or what, but half of these wires are bare, and I don't feel good about not fixing that. I disassembled the plug so that I could sneak shrink tubing up on them, and then taped the harness up to make it more rigid in a vain attempt to try to prevent further damage. Whoever decided to install the seatbelt retractor into the door is an idiot, and Hyundai should fire that guy immediately. It's about to be the moment of truth. Clearly I have a lot of faith in my work because I put the whole power door, seatbelt, window armrest assembly back together without first testing it. I don't know if I got the polarity right on the window motor, but I think I increased my odds of getting it right after my performance with the ashtray, since both are a 50-50 chance, and I got the last one wrong. Sweet. There's my other 50. It's a better car already. Now back to the track. Miraculously, 3 weeks later, I was number 102 again. It seemed a waste of paper towels to have even wiped it off. I've never been the same racing number twice in a row before. That's just crazy. Anyway, I didn't change anything in ECM link or the boost controller. I just fixed the boost leak and installed 2 regulator motors. Nothing's broken mechanically. I didn't hurt it, but with 18 counts of knock, I wasn't about to stay in it. Well, I'm gonna take it home and figure it out. Time to figure this sucker out. I don't know what that was, but it's not running right. At least I finally got a log to see what it's doing. I haven't played with the timing table yet. Right out of the hole in first gear, I've got timing advance between 20 and 30 degrees while the turbo is still trying to spool from a stop. That's not so great. It doesn't drop below 20 degrees until after I'm making over 5 pounds of boost, and it's knocking all the while. Second gear goes by without incident, a little rich and not a peep from the knock sensor. The minute I hit third gear, bam, 10 counts of knock before I can finish disengaging the clutch pedal. This time with only 3 degrees of timing advance and running no more rich nor lean than I was even in second gear. This doesn't make any sense. I saw the check engine light and got out of it until the light went out and then rolled back into it slowly. The minute I hit full throttle again, 11 counts of knock, check engine light, and I'm right back off the pedal. Of course, not before logging 333 horsepower and 374 pounds of torque with the Hyundai Elantra. I simply have to do something to make this car's tune more consistent. My airflow per rev value is off again. The car's back to running rich instead of spot on. As long as my airflow tables are inconsistent, I've really got no business messing with the timing table, so it's back to the garage for investigation. I'm going to use ECM Link for an interesting test. With the ignition on but the engine off and the laptop plugged in and capturing data, I started squeezing and wiggling the engine harness to see if I can find what I suspect is this car's problem based on what I've seen so far. It's hard to see it, but with nothing cycling, there's stuff moving on that display. The throttle position sensor is being affected by some kind of electrical problem in the engine harness. Let's get a closer look. This explains why my airflow per rev and my TPS volts keep having to be adjusted. Vibration and gravitational forces are affecting my engine harness. Under normal G-forces and conditions, this should never happen, so clearly I've got some electrical problems to sort out. The throttle position signal wire is pin 19 on the ECU. That's the input pin that's showing up in the logs as TPS volts. The throttle position sensor is actually powered by the ECU from a 5-volt output on pin number 23. That power output forks to supply power to both the mass airflow sensor and the throttle position sensor. The throttle position sensor also shares a ground with the mass airflow sensor, but it shares a ground with the engine coolant temperature sensor and the EGR temperature sensor as well. Those terminate at pin 24 and 17 at the ECU. The throttle position sensor acts as a potentiometer. It's a variable resistor with a constant hot and ground and an output wire whose voltage changes based off of its location on a resistor coil. That's why the diagram has a resistor with an arrow on it. If its input voltage or its ground resistance changes, then so does its output. So it's important to look at all the connections to the affected components. If I experienced a short to ground or a short to power or a bad connection on any one of these circuits, then it will backfeed and change the voltage across the throttle position sensor's resistor coil, ultimately affecting its output voltage. That's what I'm seeing here in the logs. So this is the reason why my tuning difficulties are continuing even after fixing all of my previous airflow issues. I end up with a strong, knock-free run on one pass, just getting it, letting it eat. And then the next pass I change nothing and my airflow counts are off, throttle position changed, and it's knocking like crazy without a good reason. It's just stupid. I want to get the full benefit of 20 psi, but I don't want to do it at the expense of my whole engine. I have to address this once and for all, and I haven't quite decided how I want to approach it yet. It's not as easy with the engine back in the car, and I'm not sure I can get the camera to fit in any of the places to show you any of it once I do. But the theory and diagnosis is all here. This car still hates me, but she's going to be nasty when she's fixed. At least whenever that day comes around, I know the windows will stay up and the intake pipes will stay on. But with my local track closing for repaving, it may be a while before I can get a chance to sort it all out. The story's not over for the Hyundai, but I'm sure nobody will mind if I move on to winter projects while this one marinates, will they? Will they? I know you'll let me know in the comments, but until the next episode, stay tubed.